Welcome to the Real Sports Talk. Today we are back with episode 23 of the podcast. We have Emmy Award winner, anchor slash host who works with the Seattle Kraken and Seattle Mariners as a broadcaster on Root Sports, Tom Glasgow with us. Tom, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. I'm thrilled to be episode 23, right? So that's Michael Jordan's number. So I'm feeling like
Yeah,
there's some kind of, I'm honored. I'm honored to be
yeah,
number 23.
23 is a special. We're almost 25. When I first started, 25 was my goal. So
You're getting
I,
there.
I didn't know if I didn't know if I was gonna make it, but we're gonna definitely get there. Um, Thank you so much though, Tom, for coming
Yeah,
on today. I really appreciate you. Let's just get right into it. Kind of just give us an overview of who Tom is and kind of what you do.
sure. So I'll give you the brief story. Born and raised in Tacoma, Washington. You mentioned Pacific Lutheran University. That's where I went to college. From there, my first job was at Cairo Radio in Seattle. Which also had a TV station. So during my time there, for a 14-year run there, I transitioned from radio to the TV side. Then went over to what is now known as Root Sports as a full-time employee. But at the time, it was Fox Sports Net Northwest, one of the shortest titles in sports broadcasting history. After about 6 years there, I went to Como Radio in Seattle. This was in 2002. They had just picked up the broadcast rights for the Mariners. They were changing their format. I knew they would need to develop a sports department. So I went over there to help build that out, work on Mariners broadcasts. 16 years there. And now I'm currently basically an independent contractor. So I can work for anyone at my pleasure if anyone wants me. And for the most part, that's been a really great relationship with Root Sports, working primarily on Mariners games. Now with the Kraken, for 8 or 9 years, we did a game of the week on Saturdays, Big Sky Football, which was a blast. Prior to that, we did some Pac-10/Pac-12 before the Pac-12 network came online and basically took all that content away. So that's the deal. I live east of Seattle. Very fortunate to have had the career I've had so far.
Most definitely. Okay, so at your time at Pacific Lutheran, what was your favorite year and why?
At PLU,
Yes, sir.
it'd be my junior year because that's when I met my wife.
Okay, that was good answer. That's a good
So
answer.
that was a good year.
Um,
There's much more to that story, but that's not going on your podcast.
most
Um,
of,
no, so that was a
what?
great year. I enjoyed my time there a lot. I grew up less than a mile from the university. So for me, it was almost this very natural transition, elementary, junior high, high school, PLU. It was just, I knew that's where I was going to go for a long time. They had an on-campus TV station, which was a big reason why I went there. And it was very easily to get involved as an undergrad, freshman, sophomore, get in there and do your thing. So had a really good time there.
When you were growing up, what was the team that you rooted for, or who was the teams that you rooted for, and maybe some players as well that
Sure.
you.
Well, look, I was about all things Seattle, right? Because I've been around a fair amount of time. Uh, my biggest passion, my first true love in sports, was before there were pro franchises in Seattle. So I'm talking like late '60s, early '70s. As a kid, um, my favorite athlete to this day, although it's close with a couple other people, is Joe Namath, former New York
Mm,
Jets quarterback. So I'm going way, way back in the time machine. He was just so cool, right? He was Broadway Joe Cool. There was so much about him beyond the football. Gave the Jets their only, or helped bring the Jets their only championship. Beyond that, huge Magic Johnson fan. Love basketball. Basketball was my passion as a high school athlete. More than any team in my life, I love the Seattle Supersonics because they were the first kind of big deal in town. So I love the Sonics, everything about them. Lenny Wilkens was I think their first sort of iconic player in the area at one point was actually a player coach for them. The cool story with Lenny is, as a high school freshman or sophomore, I went to his basketball camp, which was actually located about a mile and a half from where I live, as it turns out. I get into this business that I'm doing and fast forward to actually working games with Lenny. So Lenny was my analyst. I'm doing the play-by-play. That was usually for Seattle U basketball, but sometimes some Pac-12 games. So for me, that was just an incredible thrill to have a chance to work with this two-time Hall of Famer as a player, Hall of Famer as a coach, a guy that I had incredible appreciation for as a kid, loved him, and then I get to work with him, as an adult. So that was awesome for me.
Okay, so a lot of like the people that would kind of watch the show, they're between the ages of probably about like 16 to probably like the like 25 to 30
Sure.
range.
Oh, you say I'm
Tell
outside of your demo. I'm shocked.
tell us about the Vancouver Grizzlies.
Yeah. So you can see, that's the jersey is Sharif, number 3, Sharif Abdul-Rahim. So the last 2 seasons that the Grizzlies were in Vancouver, I did the play-by-play for the team. Was their cable package on CTV Sportsnet. So we would do 30 games a year for each of those 2 seasons, almost split down the middle, about 15 in Vancouver, 15 out on the road. I was doing those as I was a full-time employee at Fox Sports Net Northwest. So this opportunity came along. It was a dream job for me because I love basketball, love the NBA. Just mentioned how much I love the Sonics. And so for me to get that job, it was great. It was awesome. The downside was, obviously I only had the affiliation for 2 years because they moved to Memphis. They relocated. Yeah. And it was funny because I had just gotten a job, and in that year, which was it, 99, maybe 98, the preseason league meetings were actually hosted in Vancouver. So I went up for those meetings, and day one of the meetings, the news breaks that the franchise was being sold to a guy in St. Louis. And I'm like, man, I'm losing this gig before I even did a first game, right? Of course, you're hoping, that the community will rally and they'll keep the team. And Vancouver got messed with just like Seattle did. I mean, it turns out they got not sold. That guy in St. Louis, that deal fell apart. Instead, they got sold to a guy named Michael Heisley in Chicago. He's the guy that relocated the team to Memphis. So anyway, I loved it. Great people up there. They deserve better. I hope, like Seattle, at some point in the future, they'll get another franchise.
Okay, give us your opinion. Why did the Seattle Supersonics leave Seattle?
I mean, I feel like the fix was in. It's because Howard Schultz didn't look out for this community. He sold it to a bunch of people from Oklahoma City. There's no way. That team was never going to stay here once they were sold to people, an entire ownership group of Oklahoma City. Well, where do you think they're going?
Yeah,
So
no,
the fix was in. The fix was in. I think there are a lot of villains: Howard Schultz, Clay Bennett, David Stern, others. I remain bitter about it to this day, like a lot of people do. Seattle didn't deserve that. The fan support here was always incredible. When Bennett took over, he drove it into the ground. That was his goal. Get higher draft choices for when they were relocating to Oklahoma City. Depress attendance here. Yet, were there arena issues here? Yeah, there were arena issues here. Could they have been worked out? Sure, they could have been worked out, but it was never going to fly. It wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have mattered. They were gone once they were sold to that Oklahoma City group.
Yeah, that is. It hurts. I agree with you. Now they got that nice new facility over there, though. So now it's time to come home. That's all I'm gonna leave it at that. Um,
Hopefully,
okay, so
hopefully within the next year we'll get word. I mean, that's
most definitely.
you know.
I I'm hoping. Okay, so I kind of mentioned before you are a Emmy Award winner. Give me like kind of first off, that night, what are you thinking going into it?
Yeah.
Do
So
you already know you're gonna win? Like, is it already like
no, no. But the Emmy was for Kraken pregame and postgame coverage, right? So it wasn't the actual in-game production; it was the pre and postgame coverage. It's more of a team award. It's more of a team award than an individual award, right?
most
So it
definitely
wasn't
okay?
like because Tom Glasgow did this. It's because of collaboration of really dedicated people worked on this, and so I forget the number. Maybe 10 of us got Emmys for our work on Kraken pregame. I think postgame was included too. No, so I'd never been. By the way, my dog's barking in the background, so if you hear that, I apologize. Rarely barks, but of course, doing this is when she would really start gearing up. No, it was a nice event. I'd never been to an Emmys award show held in the Fremont area of Seattle. There were three nominees in the category: Kraken, Mariners, and Portland Trailblazers. I was also nominated on the Mariners broadcast. I was part of that collective group of people. So I felt like I had a 66% chance of being on one of the winners that night. So I was never overconfident, but hopeful. And so when it happened, it was great. It was cool. It's a real Emmy. It's heavy. It looks like, the ones you see on the main Emmy broadcast for network and streaming programming. So it was fun. It was my first. It was fun, and yeah, enjoyed it. And the food was great that night too, so that was good too.
Okay. How did that change your perception of, or maybe not so much perception of, but like, how did that change how you approach broadcasting?
Zero.
Zero?
Yeah, zero. I mean, it's an interesting question, but it happened to me like 42 years into my career. So, maybe it would influence somebody differently if they were, winning it in their 20s. Maybe it would help advance their career in some way. I
Hmm.
think what's really cool about it is it's just your peers acknowledging your work. So that was great. What influenced me mostly in my career were the people that I initially worked with, and one more than any other, a guy by the name of Pete Gross. Pete was the original voice of the Seahawks. He was also my boss. He was the sports director at Cairo Radio, and he gave me my first job. I had interned at Cairo. They offered me a position for a job that they had just created. So, like so much in this business, it's right place and right time. And there are occasions when you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. But that was one of those positive things. And um, Pete was a guy that I really connected with. He was all about preparation um, and knowing that the real work before, a broadcast, whether it's a sports update or a longer form thing or play by play, that success is really mostly determined by your preparation, as opposed to trying to get lucky or winging it. So that's
Most definitely.
yeah,
Okay.
that was much more influential. Yeah.
What goes into a pregame and postgame before? Okay, like before you're even on camera, like what time do you guys even get in? Like how do you guys go over everything?
Sure. Well, I'll give you the Kraken one because we're in Kraken season, right? I worked yesterday. Worked last night's game, which was this thrilling, exciting game against the New York Islanders that the Kraken won in a shootout. Um, so our producer is the first guy that he's working long before any of us. The first thing he does is he'll send out game notes to all of us. So go read the game notes, um, read newspaper articles. Then he'll send out the rundown for the show, right? So we usually have I want to say A through an E block, right? So what's that? 5 segments. Um, so I look at that, and then I start researching the specific things that we're going to be talking about. So last night we're going to talk about forechecking, and we're going to talk about the Kraken on the power play, and We're going to talk about stretch passes and all these things. So I start going over that, doing research on that. Get to the arena about 4 o'clock for a 7 o'clock game. So we have kind of a side room in the arena that we'll all gather in. We'll continue preparing there, researching, writing, making notes. I'll talk to whether it's Nick Olczyk or Allison Lucan, both of them. Hey, we're going to talk about this. How do I need to set you up on this? What do you want, right? So we kind of go through some of those dynamics. We'll come on the air at 6:30. We'll start a rehearsal around 6. So we'll go through some elements of the show so everybody knows kind of where we're going and the pace we need to go at. And then 6:30, it's do the show. And then we have 2 intermissions, obviously, and those are there's not as much preparation on our end in that. So last night the first period ends. We've got, I think, about a 3-minute break. Producer will get in my ear and go, okay, guys, here's what we're doing. We're going to do this. We're going to do that sponsored element. We're going to do this. We'll talk about that. And then Tom, UT's Piper, she's going to be interviewing Maddie Beniers. Got it. And he's great about talking through these segments with us. You've always got somebody in your ear that's communicating with you. So we do those. And then post-game, I mean, if you think about last night, so they're in a shootout, right? We have no idea who's going to win the game. It's a 50-50 proposition. So it's going to break to some degree one way or another in terms of, like, what do we do in the first segment? How are we going to handle this? If the Kraken win, they're going to have their 3 stars. They're going to come out on the ice, throw stuffed salmon into the crowd. Fun. We're going to have fun with that. If they lose, it's like different tone, different mood. We'll still have a lot of the same sponsored elements, but the show will flow a little differently. So there's more, you just got to go with the flow on a post game. Especially one that's decided late versus a big buildup and knowing exactly what you're going to do on a pregame show.
Okay. You mentioned Maddie Beniers. Maddie Beniers is probably one of my favorite hockey players. Love him. So
Yeah.
we root for him heavy, and I just so happen might have him in the fantasy. So so I mean, whatever happens. I'm just saying,
I
like,
gotcha.
yeah. Okay. Give me, when the Mariners or a team that you're covering isn't
Yeah.
as good, how do you approach it?
How do I approach it?
Maybe before the Mariners,
Okay,
were
so
good, or like,
look. Well, look until not last season, but the season prior, it had been 21 years since the Mariners had made the playoffs, right? So there have been a lot of down seasons. People may not realize this, but before Pete Carroll here, there were some down seasons with the Seahawks. Mike Holmgren had a
yeah,
very good run. Mike had a great run. But if you go way back, and I'm old enough, I can go way back. It's just part of the deal. I mean, name a team that's only always been successful. That team does not exist. So for me, and in terms of what I do, the focus is just on that game. It doesn't matter if they've won. Well, I shouldn't say it doesn't matter because it impacts your content. But you have a responsibility to your viewers that whether they've won 10 in a row coming into that game or whether they've lost 10 in a row coming into that game, you still have an obligation to present the best show possible. And that's not just me or the analyst or the producer or the audio person or the camera people. It's all of us. That's our responsibility. Because first and foremost, it's it's entertainment. What we do is entertainment. It's informative, hopefully, and entertainment. Games are entertainment. You're there to be entertained, to have fun, to enjoy yourself. And so, in that respect, it doesn't matter that much. We still have a job to do. We have to go out and do it the best way. Is it more challenging if a team's struggling? It is. It definitely is. Because it's hard to talk about losing 5 of 6 or something like that. How do you want to present it? You want to present it within context. I'm sure there are people that are already, off the Kraken bandwagon because they haven't had the start that they had hoped that they would. I'm not. I think one of the things I have is because of the length of my careers, I've got maybe a little different perspective, more of a patience perspective. I've seen too many examples of teams being written off in a something gets flipped and they turn it around. And it can go the opposite way, obviously, as well. So, yeah, you still just go out, oh, well, they've lost 10 in a row. Hey, welcome to the show. Let's get through it together. That can't be your approach, right? It's just not how you do it.
Okay. Can you give me your first off? Let's talk 2000. Let's talk kind of 95 and 2001. Both playoff
Yeah,
experiences
yeah,
before this most recent one.
yeah.
Give me what was it about those teams that just made them so amazing? Like that, of course, the '01 team was
16 regular
114,
season wins.
16.
Yeah.
Yeah. What made them so great? What made them so amazing?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'll go 95. I mean, there was so much going on. The future of the franchise was in doubt. Griffey suffered a significant injury that year. I think it was the broken wrist and crashed into the wall, missed a good amount of time. But that team, they got on a roll. There was a belief. They had a momentum about them. There's the famous story about Jay Buhner. I think it was, I want to say July, maybe early August. The M's were their uh, double digit games out of first place. And people were, well, I guess you're just playing for the wild card. And Jay was like, BS, man. We're going for the division title, which is, in fact, is eventually what they got. Um, just a real coming together, great leadership with, Lou at the top, leading that crew. Even without Junior, I mean, there's some really talented guys on that team. And you had Randy Johnson on the mound, oh,
Yeah.
by the way, which was huge. But Tino Martinez, Jay Buhner, Dan Wilson behind the plate, Mike Blauer's really solid defensive player and solid contributor. So that to me was 95. And did I forget to mention Edgar Martinez, the greatest DH in baseball
Ever.
history, and we all know what he did in that Yankee series. As far as 2001, obviously what was special about that was it was, you're within years of losing Ken Griffey Jr., and then you lose A-Rod. You got this unknown but highly hyped player out of Japan, Ichiro Suzuki. What's he all about? Um, Mike Cameron comes in and fills this void after Griffey left, and he became he's a mainstay in center field. Brett Boone at second. I mean, it was unbelievable, right? I mean, but you had a bunch of guys having career years at the same time, having the best seasons of their careers at the same time. I mean, Ichiro and Booney was like, who's going to be the MVP? They were both at that level. It was Ichiro. Um, However, they did not get it done in the postseason, and that was obviously a massive frustration for the guys, the players, and for the community. They won 116, couldn't even get to the World Series. That's how
Do
it
you
goes.
do you think that changed the trajectory of the franchise, that them winning so many and them not being able to finish the deal? Do you think that plays like a role maybe in the clubhouse or the
Uh,
psyche, or is that
I
just
don't
something
know.
that is
They were a 90-plus win team the next year, but they obviously didn't get in the playoffs. That was just a weird thing, man. I can remember we'd go to work. We're getting ready to do pregame shows every day, and we're like, and we were doing shows every day at that time. I mean, obviously they were playing almost every day, and we just never was like, I don't think they're going to lose. It's like, well, they're going to win again today. They're basically winning 3 out of every 4 games played. I mean, it was nuts. The stadium was packed every night. It was such a big damn deal, and yet, you know, they ran into the Yankees again. Had to really struggle to get by Cleveland in the first round. I mean, that was a tough test. But their offense just didn't sustain through the postseason. And Roger Clemens, Andy Pettit, all those guys just bounced them.
okay? I want to kind of talk a little bit about Safeco Field. What are your thoughts on the field? I always hear that everybody say it's a pitcher's park. It's not a hitter's park. I've always thought like being a hitter, I feel like being at sea level, I feel like the ball should carry more. I don't know nothing. I don't know nothing about nothing. So I don't know. That's probably me thinking,
Yeah,
just thinking. So like
yeah.
maybe I shouldn't. But
Well, look,
what are
it's
your thoughts?
I can tell you that Safeco Field, now T-Mobile Park, in the early portion of the season, right by the water, it is cold. It is cold, and it seems obvious that the flight of the ball is different at that time of year than it is in June, July, August, into September, right? So you're in the Mile High City. We all know the difference in the flight of the ball at a mile high elevation versus sea level. I will say this: that has should have very little impact on singles and doubles into the gap and things of that nature. So maybe you're not getting as many home runs, but guess what? That's the same story for the other team too. Um, is it a pitcher's park? Well, I mean, I think also look, a lot of that depends on the quality of your pitchers. I mean, one night a guy might go out and he shuts down the opposition. Then your next guy in the rotation goes out the next night and he gives up 6 runs in 2 innings. Is it the ballpark or is it the pitcher? I always think it's, to me, people that someone might say, well, look at all the, and look, there's a history of guys who come in here via free agency and they don't hit like they did at other places. Is it because of the park? They might think it. Did they get in an early season rut? Baseball is such a mental game, man. I think it's so much more mental for the athletes than the other, whether it's football, basketball, hockey, because I think it can get in your head. What you do at the plate, and if you don't get it done, you got that long walk back to the dugout. I think that can really mess with some guys. So maybe there's some of that with T-Mobile, but I don't put a lot of stock into that. I think if you're good anywhere. Julio's pretty
I
good. Julio's pretty good there.
That's what I was gonna say. I always say, and I don't want this to happen, and God forbid this happens, but I always say if Houston or if Julio played for Houston or Texas, I feel like Julio would hit like 50 home runs, like because it's hot from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, like
Yeah,
the what, like I just feel like he
yeah.
would come in there and and that is another interesting aspect that I think is very interesting that you brought up was the aspect of the mental and it being in the beginning of the season being so cold and stuff like that. Like
hmm
can you get through that, like after that first month? Like are you still like I've never thought of it like that, and
But
that is
but
very
but also keep this in mind is you're not playing every game at home in April and May when it's cooler, right? Let's say roughly half your games are going to be at home, but the other half might be. You might be in Texas. You might be in Arizona with a series of the D-backs. You might be down in Anaheim taking on the Angels, right? So again, could it skew some guys' numbers negatively if they're pure power hitters? Maybe, but again, I don't look. Yes, to some degree. We all know about the impact of the Green Monster in Boston. We all know about Coors Field in Denver and the elevation. So, yes, there are pitchers' parks and hitters' parks for sure. I guess I view T-Mobile kind of in the middle. I don't see it being demonstratively worse for pitchers or hitters.
okay. Can you kind of give me a I'm a big, probably one of my favorite two, oh, well, give me two. I'm gonna ask for two, please. But my two favorite players of all time Mariners, Felix Hernandez and
Mm-hmm.
probably Adrian Beltre.
Oh, that's an
Can
interesting
you
call.
could you give me a story on maybe or maybe not so much a story, but like can you kind of just give me your thoughts and opinions on what you think of those two?
Well, it's interesting for Adrian because, I mean, when you look at the numbers of his career, I mean, there's there's obviously no doubt the guy's a Hall of Famer. I mean, it's just a remarkable career. Um, and not only impactful offensively, but a great defensive third baseman. I mean, special talent. But his best years were not in Seattle, but they were still very good years. You know what I mean? He was so good that even his best years, while they weren't here, he was, I think, really good here. Um, Felix is Felix. I think it's just so unfortunate we never got to see Felix pitch in the postseason. How many times we talk about Felix losing 1-0, 2-1, 3-2. Um, But, and of course, there were those great moments. Ironically, once Adrian left here and Felix, they were very good friends, but they had these really fun exchanges often when they were going head to head with each other. So that to me is almost the main memory with those two guys, is the interactions they had given each other the business during games. Yeah, Felix, I remember driving in my car on Queen Anne Hill in Seattle, listening on the radio when Felix made his major league debut.
Mm.
Just thinking, okay, here's this hyped kid. I wonder if he'll be as good as they think he's going to be. And he was, you know.
What was the buzz like? Did you, when he threw that perfect game, what was the buzz like in the stadium that day? Like, were you there? Sorry, I should ask you, were you there that day
No,
when
so
he,
here's the funny story about it. I'm at the chiropractor, and I was off that day, so it was a day game, and I wasn't paying great attention to the game. I'm running errands, and I got this doctor's appointment, chiropractor appointment, and I'm literally face down, getting my body manipulated, and I can hear a conversation in the lobby, and I hear someone go, "Oh, did you hear what's going on at the Mariners game? Like, Felix has got a perfect game through 8 innings." I'm like, I'm stuck in the office on this chiropractic table, and I could not get out of that situation in time to go find a TV to watch him finish it
no.
off. So I missed it. I knew what was going on, but I missed it. So yeah, super cool moment, to be sure. Anyway, yeah. So like remember I said earlier, timing's everything. Right place, right time. I was in the wrong position at the wrong time on that day.
I agree. I think I was probably at school or something. So like
Yeah.
the worst decision I ever made was go to school, I guess. Like that's funny joke. Okay, with that I don't mean that. Let's talk a little bit of the Oakland A's.
Yeah.
They are like, I guess it's not the Oakland A's anymore. It's probably the Vegas
Well, they're
A's
still
or
they're going
the
to apparently they're going to be the Oakland A's until 2028. This I don't know how this is going to look. Nobody goes to their games anyway right now, so it's not like it's going to have a tremendous impact on attendance by being in essence, in this limbo period until they seemingly are going to start playing in Vegas in 2028. It's again, I go back. I remember the A's of Charlie Finley, the owner, and great players, there, Joe Rudy, Sal Bando, Bert Campaneris, Vida Blue, Catfish Hunter, on and on. Like a dynasty level of franchise. That was a long time ago. We know they've had some Billy Ball success, right? Finding, using analytics and finding these players, and every
Mhm.
once in a while they rise. The stadium's a joke. It's terrible. I don't know all the ins and outs in terms of why this is happening, other than it's always comes down to money and how much your local government's going to give and ownership, and but we'll see how it goes in Vegas. I mean, I have no doubt they'll draw more there because they're drawing nobody in Oakland. I feel bad for the fans there. They're really hardcore fans. It's unfortunate. The good news is, to some degree, that if they do want to see Major League Baseball, at least the Giants are in the area, right?
Mm.
We've seen the Raiders move from Oakland to Vegas. That seems to have worked out really well. I bet you got a lot of Raiders fans from Oakland who are like, this is actually kind of a good thing. It's pretty cheap to get to Vegas. I can go spend a weekend in Vegas, take advantage of everything Sin City has to offer, and still watch my Raiders. So maybe to some respect that'll be the case for some A's fans. They can go spend a weekend in Vegas, see a show, do a little wagering, watch a couple ball games.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about the Oakland A's. I've always like I when I was growing up, of course I was always a Seahawks and like Seattle fan because I grew up in Spokane and things like that. But my second favorite team growing up was always the Oakland Raiders. I don't know what it was, just something about the toughness that they had. Their little they what is it, the pirate that was on like it might still be there.
Yeah,
I
it's
know
on
they're
the helmet.
pretty
Yeah,
I
yeah,
like and so like I always really liked like I always liked the Raiders and stuff. And so like when I growing up and like just seeing kind of what has unfolded in Oakland, it's kind of sad. Like it's really sad, I kind of feel like. And I know they're a rival and like but like that's still, as you said, that is a historic, just the
Yeah,
area. Oakland is a historic area. They lost Golden State. They lost they're losing everybody, and like that's a huge hit on the community too. They're moving.
for sure.
They're talking about moving the stadium right now. We're talking about building a new stadium down in Denver right now. The businesses downtown are doing everything they can to make sure that that does not happen.
Yeah,
So that, because they're saying that they're going to lose so much revenue because
yeah,
they're going to move it closer to Ball Arena and stuff like that.
yeah,
They're going to lose millions and millions of dollars in revenue
yeah.
down there. So that,
I'll, I agree with you. I'll tell you, oftentimes a lot of the people who are forgotten in these types of situations um, are the stadium and arena employees. A lot of these are people who live on fixed incomes, retirees who use working these games as a way to supplement their incomes. Because I see them work at Lumen Field. I see the same ones working at T-Mobile, and I see the same ones
mhm,
working at Climate Pledge Arena.
every year.
And that's one of the really sad parts to me is the negative financial impact on a lot of those people. That you know, so again, so one of the great things about the Climate Pledge Arena opening and the Kraken coming here is that provided work opportunities. And that building, whether it doesn't matter if it's a sporting event, a concert, whatever. Those are more opportunities for people to work and make some money, and that's important.
I see. Okay. Do you ever travel with the teams, like Kraken or Mariners at all?
Not really. Yeah,
Okay.
not really.
Okay. I
Yeah,
wasn't sure if you were able to, if you guys get to
yeah.
like, because I always see like Brad, and it's usually what's the pitcher, the Aussie dude. I
Ryan
always see
Rollins
them.
Smith.
Yeah, I
Ryan
always see
Rollins
them in
Smith will do some
the
traveling,
studio,
and
and I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, sorry.
No. I say Brad travels, Angie travels. Sometimes Jen will travel. Um, I'm happy to say I don't travel.
No, most definitely.
I'm happy not.
Yeah.
I'm happy not to travel. But so people who may not be familiar, um, I'm that utility guy off the bench, right? So I'm usually in
Most
working
important.
when Brad's off, Jen's off, Angie's off. I can slot in, and I'm usually doing an update desk, but I can also host. So they're the three primary people in terms of the host and reporting roles: Jen, um, Brad, and Angie. So that's
When
part of the
you
reason I don't travel, which is
when you
again a requirement.
when you're on the update desk, like during the game or anything,
Yeah.
is that live?
Yeah, I think almost. I mean, I think we've had some occasions due to conflicts or studio issues. We may have recorded a few, but beyond that, it's all live. Yeah.
So when we see, like, when they cut before, so when they come back from an inning and it is one of like the ladies talking about, come down to, let's just say, Edgar Way or something, or not Edgar, Niehaus Way or something, like,
Yeah.
come down over here. So that is all live, or is
It's all
that
live.
just like,
Yeah, it's all live.
okay?
We've got copy for various promotional things, or we might refer to another game that's being played. But yeah, it's all live. Yep.
Okay, when there's controversial topics, how do you go about them in sports?
Um,
How do
how
you
do
go
I
about
go
talking
about
about
them?
them?
I'm trying to think in terms of. I mean, there's always something controversial going on. If it's I'm trying to think, within a pregame and a postgame structure, which is what I'm usually involved in, because of what we do and how we do it, unless it's directly related to that game or team, we're probably not going to get into it because that's just not our
Mm.
programming. So that's not a great, sexy answer, but um, yeah, I don't know. Now, if it's related to the team, like I don't know, maybe there was just trying to make something up. Let's say the Mariners and another team were involved in a brawl the night before, and guys got suspended, and I don't know how controversial that's considered, but certainly we'd talk about that. So here's what
Okay,
happened. Here's how it looked. this guy looked like he was the instigator. That guy looked like I'm not sure that, again, I don't know if, that's what you mean by controversial, that type of thing, or more of a scandal, like the Michigan situation, right? Michigan football and that whole thing
Yeah,
that's
we
been,
don't.
been
Yeah,
going on.
they're bad news. That's just all bad news.
Yeah.
Okay, when there was a moment probably a couple months ago towards the end of the season where JP Crawford dropped the F bomb on TV during a post game
Oh,
interview.
yeah. I loved
And
it. I
and I
loved it.
loved it too, and everybody loved it. And JP, bro, when you watch this, dog, we all rock with you, bro. Like, and that's all okay. We understand whatever the FAA fee is. They're gonna root sports is fine. Um, what goes through your head though in those types of moments? Like, how do you reel that back in, and like,
Yeah.
how do you
Well,
keep it going?
here's why I loved it. It's not, I didn't love it because I just think it's cool when someone drops an F bomb on TV. It
Yeah,
wasn't that.
exactly.
To
It was the
me,
moment.
it was the moment. Exactly.
Exactly.
It was the moment. It was an honest reflection of how he was feeling. He wasn't trying to shock anybody. It wasn't um, it wasn't something he had planned on doing. It was that passion, that energy of the moment. It was real. Okay. Now, so I think what happened that night, I don't think I was watching it home. I wasn't working that night. I think Brad came on after that and said, hey, we want to
Hmm.
apologize if you were offended by the language. And that's kind of a requirement we have. It's not like we were trying to slap JP on the wrist. I was working one night where we ran post game comments. I think it was with Scott's service. And Scott was just having he was talking during his post game show. And I think he I think he used a profanity. I think he used the S word. I don't want to, it's your podcast. I'm not gonna, Anyway, but again, it wasn't to draw attention. Anyway, he said it, and the producer got Meyer and said, "Hey, we need to, make note of that and just say, hey, we apologize, for the language." And that's what we did, and we moved on. So it's funny you bring this up because I don't know if you saw the end of the Michigan Penn State game when they interviewed the interim coach right after the game, and he comes on and they're like, the gal that's interviewing him is, hey, wow, you're filling in for Harbaugh, he's suspended, the adversity, you come to Penn State, all these fans, the tough environment, and you get it done. What are your emotions, And he's like, well, first of all, I want to thank the Lord, and then just boom, right into the F bomb. And then another one came a little bit later on. And I thought, well, that didn't strike me. That didn't strike me as I don't know. That whole Michigan thing's interesting. It didn't strike me the same way that JP's did. It was like Harbaugh died or something. I mean, he was suspended for a game as part of a cheating scandal. Anyway, so that's how you handle it. You just let your audience know it's out, it's done. You can't reel it back in. Um, not criticizing those guys. Um, I'll use that word on occasion myself. Hopefully, never on the air. It's different. It's different in my role, right? Versus you're interviewing an athlete or a coach in the heat of a moment, potentially. It's a different standard.
I 100% agree with you on like it in that type of moment. Like JP came through in that moment, and he was so hot. I remember like JP was so hot before those games too. If I remember correctly, he just hit a home run the night before. Like
Mm,
I agree with you 100%. I'm not
yeah,
all. I don't think that you should be
yeah,
cussing on national television because I just don't think that's a good look. I don't think it's like a what you do on your private life is what we do on our private life. What you do in the public eye and on like the internet and stuff. I think you should try to like reel it in. And as well, I'm a Nebraska Cornhusker fan, so like I Michigan, I have my like I just dislike Michigan as it is, and and I'm a Seahawk fan too, and I've always thought Jim Harbaugh was just like just a tool. He's a tool bag to me, and I people that cheat to win, people that need to cheat to win, those are not the people that cheat. Those
yeah,
are people I always say those are the people that you got to watch out for, like because you just they'll do anything to win, and that's scary. That is
yeah.
scary.
I'm a bigger fan of John Harbaugh.
Are
I like
you?
it. I like his brother better. He's done a great job with the Ravens, and I don't think he's the knucklehead his brother is. I think that's pretty obvious.
I agree. And then it's impressive. It's impressive. I'm not knocking, like, it's impressive that both of them are coaching, or that they are
Yeah.
coaches on a one's on a Power Five level and another one is in the NFL. Like that's really rare too. And that
Well, you cannot argue with Jim Harbaugh's results, right? That's different from just saying, he's an irritating dude. And maybe he's a guy that, he's now accepted his 3 game suspension. Was he aware cheating? I mean, regardless, he won at the NFL level, rebuilt Michigan. His brother's a terrific head coach for the Ravens. So yeah, I'll give him. You got to give him credit for that. So
You see, and I agree. And I was somebody that I'm a Nebraska fan, so I'm not gonna lie. When what was the old Ohio State coach,
Woody
Urban
Hayes.
Myers, when he
Oh,
was when
Urban
he
Meyer.
was
I'm going way back.
when before we got Matt Rule, I was 100% on board for oh boy, what's his name? I'm forgetting his name again.
Urban Meyer.
Yes, just because he's a
Yeah.
winner, and I believe that, like, I don't know. I don't know. I was compromising. I feel like sometimes you got to compromise, but, like, I don't know. I just don't really like those types of, like, I don't know. I don't know. It's just slimy. It's
Yeah.
slimy to me, and I just get scared. It's kind of why I like Gonzaga. I feel like Gonzaga, they are somebody that is, they don't have the most money. They don't have the biggest of names. They're not going to fly first class or anything like that, but they're going to come through. They're going to play hard. They're going to whoop your ass, and they're gonna go home and they're gonna go have they're gonna go study for their test tomorrow. Like, and that's kind of like, I kind of feel how Spokane
Well, I know.
is.
I
It's
know.
a it's a
There.
grind, and
Everybody I've talked to, Nebraska fans have a tremendous reputation as being classy, great sports, people you want to have in your stadium when Nebraska comes calling. So you got a good program to root for.
no, I agree. Nebraska is it's a love hate relationship, because I was born we were born in Nebraska. Well, I
Yeah.
wasn't, but my mom and dad were. So, like, I was born into it, but we're on to better days now. One last kind of like sports question.
Yes,
What
sir.
were your what is you was your if I can speak. What was your thought when Julio made that catch over the wall and acted like it went over the wall?
Oh, yeah. My thought was he just punked all of us. I
Okay.
thought it was. I thought it was fun. And I think he did that. I forget who hit the ball, but I think the two of them had a relationship. Like they were. I think it was not Julio trying to show off for the grand audience. I think that was Julio giving his buddy the business.
I see.
And I can't remember the name of the player who hit the ball. That's what I think prompted that. But it was very. I think it was not showboating, but the playfulness of his personality. That's how I took it. That it wasn't him being an ass, excuse me, but it was him just being Julio. He was just having fun playing the game. It's like what we'd all do. We might do something like that playing softball, right? Make a great catch and you just robbed a hit from your buddy, and oh man, I didn't catch. Oh, I did catch it actually. You're out. Something fun like that. So I thought it was fun. It was
I
entertaining, and that's again to circle back what we talked about earlier. Sports is entertainment first and foremost. Pro sports and college at a lot of entertainment. He entertained, didn't hurt anybody's feelings. Everybody was smiling. It was fun.
No, most definitely. I still like I still like that is a moment in my head that I think a lot of Mariner fans will always remember. Just like like I couldn't tell you who pitched on July 19th, this past season, but I can tell you that Logan Gilbert was on the mound that day, and just his facial expressions and things like that, like, just moments. Those are
Yeah.
moments in time that
Yes.
will live on forever. I personally think. I don't know. That's
Hundred
just
percent.
my mindset. Let's kind of transition off this just a little bit. Um, where how where do you go to get your information from? How do you, like, when you are gonna go on air? How do you have that extra, like, 'cause I know you talk about production and everything, and they give you like but I know you got to have some sort of like little different avenues that you can like that you
Well,
get.
I sure. I mean, but it's probably all just obvious stuff. Like, the team puts out game notes, the league puts out game notes. Stats Inc. Is a company that provides oftentimes some really interesting, insightful, analytical information. Get stuff there. I might go to the opposing team's website, kind of learn a little bit more. Sometimes I'm working on a pronunciation for maybe a player I'm not familiar with, especially in the NHL. That was really true in year one with a new franchise, and so yeah, it's all those places, again, and you once you get the rundown for the show, you have a good idea in terms of specifically what you're going to be talking about. As the game's being played, we're always listening to John Forsland, J.T. Brown, Eddie Olczyk. We're listening to their commentary. So gaining that information, their knowledge that we can apply during the intermissions in the post-game show, I find very helpful. So that's kind of how I go about it, using the Kraken as an example.
So, okay, you kind of just touched on it a little bit. Pronouncing names. I know hockey's really. I feel like you have an even harder time in baseball because you have these Dominican players, you have all these people from so many different areas of the world. How do you figure out how to pronounce all these names and things like that and make it
Well,
so fluent and then in the moment?
I like to, first of all, it helps me to hear the name as opposed to reading a phonetic breakdown, right? So
Yes.
teams and leagues will always provide a written phonetic pronunciation of the name. Well, you and I had a discussion before we started this. Like, I want to make sure I pronounced your first name correctly. Vajon, correct?
Yes, sir.
Vajon. We went over it. We went over because I want to get it right. I did a UW football game. It's probably been 10 years or longer now. The University of Hawaii was in town. So there were a lot of Pacific Islander kids on the roster, and some of those names can be very difficult for someone from Tacoma, Washington, who didn't grow up in their world to pronounce. So I go back and listen to previous games that they had played, and really work and just breaking down names. I'm trying to think, there was a name last night on the broadcast for the Islanders that I was not that familiar with, and I break it down and I say it over and in my head, and I'm breaking it down, trying to get it right. That's important to me, and I'm not going to say I've always been perfect on it, because sometimes your brain's you're wanting to say it, you know what you want to say, but the connection between your brain and your tongue malfunctions, and something may not come out the way that you intended it to. But I do, because I do think it's really important. It's just one of those things you work at. It's just part of the preparation process. Some teams are more difficult than others. That's just how it is.
Okay, a question that kind of goes around or that people talk about in Spokane is Seattle's perception of Spokane. What do you think of Spokane? What were your
I like
what were your
Spokane.
first thoughts?
I don't know. For me, I guess initially Spokane was where we flew to drive to Pullman to do a game, right? So I didn't have a lot of exposure initially to actually the city, because we'd fly into Spokane, then we'd drive down to Pullman to do a game, and then fly. And that's, by the way, that's a lot of situations when you go to other cities. Oftentimes you're not really connected with the city. You're going to an airport, you go to a hotel, you go to the game, you go back to the airport to
To the
leave.
airport,
So you
yeah.
don't get a chance to really experience it. So um, I've always wanted to go. I love basketball, as I talked about earlier. I've always wanted to go to Hoop Fest. I think I'm kind of beyond playing now, but just to see that whole thing, because it just looks awesome. Obviously, I've been to Spokane to do some Zags games, which it's such a blast. To go into the kennel and that environment and those fans, the student bodies right on top of you. Very cool. Um, I would probably have a tough time in Spokane with the winters. It's a little colder, a little more snow over there than we get over here. Um, so, yeah. My daughter actually went to. My daughter was a nice soccer player in high school, and was getting recruited by Whitworth, and so we went over there and went to Whitworth and toured that campus, which I thought was really cool. Saw the Pine Bowl, out there where they
Yeah.
play, all that stuff. So yeah,
Whitworth is a top level Division 3 school. They
yeah,
are they
yeah.
are yeah. What do you think a misconception is about Seattle that you hear when you're outside of
Misconception.
Seattle?
Um, I guess now the thing is it's that it's crime ridden. That's a dangerous place. Um, are there certainly are issues with homelessness, with crime, and I'm not kind of getting out of my realm here. Um, it's a lot of the stuff that a lot of major cities face and deal with. So I'm not smart enough to know what the answers are to improve those situations. There are people whose jobs are that. I love the city. I think it's one of the most scenic places in the world. Um, I hope the challenges that Seattle faces, those in power and local government, can find solutions in conjunction with local businesses. And downtown isn't what it used to be. I'll say I used to love to go to downtown Seattle. There was such especially in the summertime in the holiday season, such an energy and people out. And you'd walk from downtown and Westlake Center, and you go down to Pike Place Market. It's not like it was. It's not like it was pre-pandemic. Pandemic did not help. A lot of people have not returned to work downtown, and that's a problem too. So I'll just leave it at that. I'm not an expert. I live on the east side because my work came out this way, but I'm always in Seattle. I mean, that's where the stadiums are. That's where I go. So yeah, I'm always. I think about it fairly often. I feel fortunate that this is the area I was born into. Had nothing to do with that decision, just worked out that way, and I've lived my entire life in this area, and I feel very fortunate that that's been the case.
I agree. I love the diversity that you guys have there. Like when I go to the store in Seattle, we could be anywhere. I will see so many different people, like of so many different walks of life. And I think
Yeah.
that is very interesting because it's just a different perception of like what you see on a daily basis compared if you're in Spokane or if you're in Kennewick or something like that. Okay, I got two more questions for you, and then we'll wrap it up. What is a question people ask you when you're out in public, when people see you?
I don't. Let's see. It's not like I've got to beat off the paparazzi. Fend them off like maybe a Brad Pitt or now Travis Kelsey and what's that? Who's that gal he's
Taylor
dating
Swift?
now? Oh yeah, Taylor Swift. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's I'll have interactions with people like at Kraken games. They'll see our set and they'll come by and they'll just say, "Hey, like the job you guys do," or "Hey, watch you all the time and keep up the good work," that kind of stuff. So we had a guy come by last night, asked Nick and I to autograph his hockey puck. Did that. Had some fans, they were like, "Hey, we're doing selfies. Can you put your head in the selfie?" That's all fun. That's all fun stuff. But I I walk around like anybody else. Nobody, it's not like I'm some big deal in town in that regard. But I enjoy when people do recognize you and you're like, "Hey, are you that you do that?" And I'm like, "Yeah." "Oh, what do you think about it?" Those are fun interactions. So sports. One of the things I really love about sports is how a community can come together when teams are on special runs, right? So when the Sonics won the championship in '79, I was in high school. It was so cool. The Seahawks Super Bowl runs, the three that they've been to and the one that they won. I mean, it's crazy in town. The Mariners, getting back into the playoffs a season ago, that was phenomenal. Everybody gets on board. Everybody's a Mariners fan. The Kraken last year, year two, going to the playoffs. Come on. I mean, I know what Vegas did, but that was crazy off the charts.
Yeah.
People, it brought so many people into Kraken hockey and exposed them to them. And even if they weren't hockey fans, people were like, let's go Kraken. You have a great. So that's one of the things I really love most about sports is how it can uplift and bring a community together. At that point, nobody cares what you do, how much you make, your politics, doesn't matter because you're all in on this team and hoping that your guys or gals have the success that you hope they'll have by finishing it off with a championship.
That is what you kind of just to kind of piggyback off what you said. That is one of the things that I really appreciate about you. There's multiple things, but that was one of the things is I'm sure as you know, as you meet a lot of people, there's a lot of people that are, I'm not going to say like big time or anything like that, but they'll try, maybe not so much try to big time you, but like you were very friendly. And we had like a 20-minute conversation on like Jared Kelnick when I first met you. And I just appreciate you because like, you didn't have to do that. You didn't know who I was. You didn't even know I worked for KHQ at that point. You just like, I just appreciate you because you are somebody that like, I know I'm 25 years old. So like I've grown up watching you guys and I just really appreciate you. And I just appreciate like the example that you guys set and like what you guys are doing.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. It's super nice. I mean, I appreciate it. Look, I'm very fortunate to have the career I have. If I can share any kind of little wisdom I may have with somebody who wants to kind of head down a similar path, I'm happy to help because I had people do that for me. And so it's paying it forward. And so you're just getting started, man. So I wish you the best with everything. You know, I'm always happy to help and swing by the podcast. I'm number 23. I'm good with that. I'll always have number 23 podcast. But as you get down the road with